Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is our 2022 MIPS Office Hours webinar. My name is Zach Smith. I'm the ACR Senior Quality Program Specialist. And today's webinar is mostly going to be for Q&A, so I hope everybody has some questions. As a reminder, this meeting will be recorded and the link will be sent to everybody who registered. It'll also be posted on our QCDR page. That's acr.org/QCDR. So through the meeting, you can enter your questions into the Q&A box and we'll answer them along the way. And then at the end, we'll read some out loud. We can also unmute you to have you ask your questions out loud if you have any. What we're going to cover today is a quick overview of the key dates and then a walkthrough of the CMS submission process. Then we're going to go into some reminders about MIPS in 2023. And after that, it's going to be time for Q&A. So here are the key dates. These are the dates for 2022, but they're going to be the same for 2023. So do keep these in mind if you're planning to use us for the 2023 reporting year. December 31st is the date that the MIPS performance period wraps up. And then we ask that you have all of your data uploaded to us by January 31st. So at this point, we're past that January 31st deadline. So hopefully, if you're on this call, you've already got all your data uploaded. We can still work with you if you haven't yet, but that is when we want all your data to have been finalized. Now, you'll have the month of February and really the first couple weeks of March, if you need them, to review the data for your TIN and begin selecting which measures and IAs and everything you want to submit to CMS. Now, the absolute deadline for submitting to CMS, as always, is March 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern. So, we strongly recommend having everything submitted at least a week or two before that, just to make sure that no issues happen at the last minute. And then it's usually sometime in the summer that you'll receive your final feedback report, which will include your final score for the 2022 MIPS year and also what your payment adjustment is going to be. So look out for that around July or August. So let's talk a little bit about the CMS submission process. Hopefully you are already aware that the portal is open for CMS submission. We opened it in early January, which is around the time that CMS begins taking submissions. You can submit your quality measures, your improvement activities, and if applicable, your promoting interoperability data, all under the CMS submission tab in your MIPS portal dashboard. Now, we do have to receive the payment for your MIPS reporting before you're able to submit. So if you try to submit but you haven't paid yet, you'll get a message saying that your submission is blocked. So you can check on that in your invoice section of your NRDR page if you're not sure if you've paid yet. I did want to mention the EUC exemption is still available, at least for COVID reasons. So you can submit that up until next Friday, March 3rd. Now, it is no longer automatic. In the last few years, you were able to simply not report anything and CMS would automatically grant you that exemption, but now you at least have to submit the application. So if you are interested in doing that, or if you've been planning on it, make sure you get that in by March 3rd. To actually begin the CMS submission process, you'll of course start out in the NRDR portal, and then you'll click on the MIPS participation portal under your list of registries. From there, you'll click on data collection and reports. This is the same place you go to upload your data, to look at your performance report and all that. But you'll go over to the CMS submission tab to finalize your actual CMS submission. And just to reiterate, ACR does not submit automatically for users. We do transmit your data to CMS, but you have to click the button yourself to actually get that data sent to CMS. Now, once you've clicked that link, you'll start off by filling out a simple attestation that says, you've been authorized to submit this data to CMS. Then you'll also select whether you're reporting as a GPRO or as individuals. And after you've done that, you can open up your quality measures tab and you can start making your selections. So what you'll see here is a list of your TINs, and if you're submitting as individuals, you'll see a list of the NPIs within that TIN, but you'll see what measures are applicable to that TIN or to those NPIs. So you'll see a list of all your measures. It's going to look pretty similar to what you see in your performance report. We do recommend submitting all of your measures to CMS. CMS always picks your top 6, so they'll score you based on your best 6 measures. But if you're able to submit more, we strongly encourage you to, because that helps CMS with the process of benchmarking, and especially for measures that don't have a benchmark, it's really more important now than it ever has been to submit data for those so that they'll stay in the program. Now, once you've marked your measures as selected for MIPS reporting, you'll indicate what the data completeness is. So you'll either check this box here that says my group is submitting 100% of exams relevant to this measure, or if you haven't quite submitted 100% of exams, you'll just enter your total volume and then we'll calculate the data completeness. So in this example below, if the person had done 10,000 CT exams, but for whatever reason, only 9,500 had been reported, they would put in 10,000 there, and then we would calculate the performance as, roughly 96%. And just a reminder that as long as your performance is over 70%, or your completeness is over 70%, you will be scored like normal on the measure. If it falls below 70%, you'll most likely get no points for it. Just make sure that your completeness is being reported correctly. Now, once you've made these selections, you'll click the Save button, and then if you're ready to submit, you'll click on this button here that says Submit to CMS. Now, when you click that button, that transmits your data from us to CMS. So make sure that even if you've saved your selections, make sure you submit to CMS, and it'll come up with a timestamp to let you know for sure that you've submitted, and it'll also show you a View Score button, which I'll show in just a moment. Now, after you've submitted your quality measures, go down to the Improvement Activities tab. Assuming that you're reporting your improvement activities through us, you are able to report those directly through the QPP website, so you can do whatever you prefer. But if you're planning to report those through us, then make sure you do pretty much the exact same process. You'll drop down your TIN, you'll click on a button that says Review Activities, and then you'll make your selections for the activities that either your group or your individual physicians are planning to report. And then again, you'll click that Submit to CMS button. And I want to emphasize that there is a separate button for improvement activities and for quality measures. So if you've selected improvement activities, but you've only submitted your quality measures, you do also have to go down to the improvement activities section and click that Submit to CMS button as well. And this is what you'll see once a TIN has been submitted. A View Score button will pop up right next to the Submit to CMS button. So if you don't see that, then you know that it has not successfully submitted to CMS. So in the example below, we've got 2 TINs that haven't submitted yet, and then a third TIN that has submitted. You see the View Score button and you see the timestamp. Just double check that and make sure that your TINs have successfully submitted. Now, when you click this View Score button, it's going to show you your preliminary score. And that preliminary score may not include certain bonuses that you might receive as, for example, a small practice. It will not include if a measure has gotten a same year benchmark. It's going to default to 3 points until CMS actually calculates that benchmark, at which point it could get higher than 3 points. Also, certain reweighting factors, especially the cost category, that's not calculated until after the MIPS reporting period wraps up. So you likely won't see if your cost category has been reweighted. Now, it will put weight into the quality category if you're considered non-patient facing, and if it knows that you're exempt from the promoting interoperability category, you should see that reflected here. But some of these more complicated reweighting factors might not happen until later. And again, do confirm that all of your categories have been submitted when you view the score, because each category does have its own Submit to CMS button. And this is what it looks like when you pull that button up. You'll see a breakdown of your quality, your improvement activities, and your PI. Now, of course, in most cases, you're not submitting PI as a radiology group, but some groups do have to submit that. Most likely that's going to say 0 for you, and it's going to be reweighted to quality. So as you can see in this example, we have a score for QM, that's the quality score, and then we have an IA score. So this person would know that those two categories have successfully been submitted. And then the preliminary score they're getting with the combination of those two categories is 72.7, which if that was submitted for this year, that would be above the performance threshold, and it would be, actually, no, it would be just below the performance threshold, which is 75. But of course, this is just a preliminary score, so it's not set in stone. If anything, it will likely go up a little bit from what you see here. But it's a pretty good indication of whether you're at least going to surpass that threshold. So that's pretty much the process for CMS submission. Obviously, if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to us anytime over the next few weeks at the NRDR support email address. Now I want to talk a little bit, though, about some changes that are coming in 2023. If you've been on our previous webinars, we've touched on this a little bit, but there are a few pretty big changes here that we want to make sure that everybody is extra aware of. Now, the performance threshold is not changing. That's a good thing. It's unfortunately still pretty high. It's 75, but at least it hasn't gone up. Only 3 MIPS measures have been removed that were part of our measures that were available to radiologists, and most of them weren't measures that were really widely used, so hopefully that's not going to negatively affect anybody too much. One big change, though, is that measure scoring has changed, and now they're eligible for a full 1 to 10 points rather than a minimum of 3 points, which is how it's been for the first 7 years of MIPS. You know, even a measure that you were doing very poorly on, it would default to 3 points. But now, if you're landing in decile 1, you'll get a score of 1. Hopefully that won't affect anybody too much, but that's just something to be aware of. Just like in 2022, QCDR measures are likely going to be the only way that you're able to achieve a positive adjustment if you're reporting to MIPS using a registry. Right now, so many radiology measures are capped at 7 points that you just can't get a good enough score to pass that performance threshold without including some QCDR measures that are eligible for more points. Lastly, there's a pretty big change to measure 145, which I'll talk about in a few slides. That's a very popular measure. That's the fluoroscopy measure, and a lot of radiologists have been using it. The measures that were removed are these 3 here. Measure 76, that's prevention of CVC-related bloodstream infections. And then the other 2 are 2 different vaccination measures. The influenza immunization and pneumococcal vaccination. Now, these were turned into a new measure. They just consolidated all of the immunization measures into one. So they haven't exactly gone away, but they're no longer separate measures. Now, these are the measures that are capped at 7 points. As you can see, it's a lot of them. And the ones that are pretty widely used by radiologists would be 147, that's the nuclear medicine correlation with existing studies measure. Also 360, that's the high dose radiation studies measure. 364, that's follow-up for pulmonary nodules. And 405 and 406 are follow-up imaging for incidental abdominal and thyroid nodules. And then finally, 436, that's use of dose lowering techniques in CT. So these are measures that almost all of our members have been submitting, and unfortunately, you cannot get more than 7 points for these measures. Now, a noticeable absence here is measure 145, which until 2023 was capped at 7 points. So we have proposed some changes to CMS for the numerator of this measure, and they approved them for 2023. So the measure is now only titled Radiology Exposure Dose Indices Reported for Procedures Using Fluoroscopy. Now, this used to include exposure time and number of images, but we've removed the exposure time and number of images as a way of meeting the numerator performance. So this means that to meet performance on this measure, the final report has to include those dose indices, reference air kerma, kerma area product, or peak skin dose. And the report should clearly state which quantity you're submitting. So, you know, we don't want you to just give us a measurement. Don't just say 10 milligray, say something like PSD equals 10 milligray, or reference air kerma equals 10 milligray. So just 10 milligray on its own would not satisfy performance. That's not really a change to the measure, but it's something that we wanted to emphasize, and we added that as a numerator note. Now, we have had some people express concern about this measure, especially people with older fluoroscopy units who were relying on the exposure time and number of images to meet performance. And we understand why some people may be concerned about it, but we want everyone to understand that the benefits of the change outweigh the potential loss in performance score, because this was a measure that was very likely to be removed for 2023. It had already been capped at 7 points for a few years, and that meant it was pretty much on the chopping block to be totally removed. Now, the measure, because of this change, it no longer has a benchmark, which does mean it's considered a non-benchmarked measure. But the good news is that a lot of users report this measure. So it almost definitely will receive a same year benchmark as long as people report data for it. And that means that it will once again be eligible for up to 10 points. So if you're getting a good score on this measure, you will likely get 10 points if it gets a same year benchmark. It also means that you don't necessarily have to get 100% on the measure to get a high score. You know, before you had to get 100% if you wanted to get anywhere near a good score on this measure. If you, I think, even ended up in 99%, that would put you down in decile 3 or something like that. So this means that at least for the next 2 years, while it's considered non-benchmarked, it will be eligible for up to 10 points with the same year benchmark. We hope everybody understands the logic of making that change, and we may have to change other measures in the future to keep them in the program. It's just an unfortunate side effect of how strict CMS is about topping out measures and removing them from the program. Now, since we were talking about non-benchmark measures, I wanted to explain their scoring policy for non-benchmark measures beginning in 2023. Now, if a measure is in its first year, they have said that it will default to 7 points. Now, used to, a non-benchmark measure would just default to 3 points. So they increased that to 7 points in the first year as a way to incentivize participation in the measure. In the second year, that will drop to a minimum of 5 points. Now, of course, these measures are still eligible for same year benchmarks, which means they can get up to 10 points. This is just the default score if they're brand new and they don't meet the reporting requirements to get a same year benchmark. Now, unfortunately, if a measure is still not benchmarked by its third year, then the default score will be 0, unless, of course, it gets the same year benchmark. So this will likely apply to all of the non-benchmarked QCDR measures and also to measure 145. So you may see that the default score for 145 is 0, but please know that with the same year benchmark, it's eligible for up to 10 points. Now, our QCDR measures are still the same as in 2022. We still have the 6 turnaround time measures. the one DIR measure. We have 6 Grid 2.0 measures, which can be submitted with the Simplified reporting template. And then we have the same 9 measures that were licensed from the MSN registry. Those are also reported using that Simplified submission template. And as a reminder, that Simplified submission template, it can be used for ACRAD 36 through 42, and it has to be used for the MSN measures. But this template is basically a copy of the MIPS reporting template. It's almost identical, except it has even fewer columns than the MIPS measure template. And just like the MIPS template, you are going to upload that to the MIPS portal under the upload data page. So, you know, with the grid turnaround time measures, you have to upload those under the grid section of your account. But for the grid 2.0 measures and for the MIPS measures, you can submit all of that under the upload data section of your MIPS portal. So we made that change a couple years ago to just try to make the reporting process easier for those measures. We do encourage you to look into reporting those measures if you haven't yet. If they don't get a benchmark in the next couple years, they may end up removed from the program. So the more people that are able to report them for 2022 and for 2023, the better. And of course, if you have any questions about reporting those, reach out to us and we can provide you some resources. Now, as far as avoiding a negative adjustment for 2023, it's going to be the same as it was in 2022. If you're a large practice where most of your weight is going to go into the quality category, then you're going to have to score over 7 points per measure, just slightly over 7 points per measure. But if you're scoring only 7 per measure, then you would fall just under that performance threshold. So if you have 5 measures that get 7 points and then 1 that gets 10 points, that would be enough to put you over the edge. But 6 measures at 7 points would not meet that performance threshold. If you're a small practice, then a little more of that weight goes into the IA category, which is easier to get a full score on. So it's a little bit easier for small practices. For those, you would just have to get at least 5 points per measure. So for a small practice, just 6 points, 6 measures that are capped at 7 points would be sufficient. But still, it's worth it to look into some of these benchmarked measures that are available in the QCDR that could potentially get you a higher score than 7 points. So in conclusion, before we move on to the Q&A, if you haven't already finalized your uploads for 2022, please do that right away. The sooner you can get that in, the better for us, because our processing times can start to get slow around this time of year. We have a lot of people uploading correction files and things like that. So the sooner you can get it to us, the better. And again, we recommend submitting all the measures that are available to you. For benchmarking reasons, it just helps to have people submit as many measures as possible. Honestly, it's even better if you're scoring poorly on a measure, because first of all, CMS will only score you based on your best 6. But if you have measures that are scoring poorly, then that helps the benchmark because it sets the benchmark lower. So that kind of does a favor to everybody using the measure. It keeps it from getting topped out so quickly. So submit everything. Don't be afraid of submitting a measure that you're scoring poorly on. And we recommend starting to work on your 2023 plan right away. If you're planning on reporting new measures that you've never submitted to us before, then definitely start looking into those measure specs. You might need to make some changes to your reporting templates and things like that to make sure that you're able to meet performance for those measures. And also for data completeness, if there are elements that you're not capturing that would make it impossible to submit some of these measures right now, definitely try to get those changes implemented right away so that you're able to submit at least 70–75% of your data. And of course, if you're not already signed up for GRID and/or for DIR, go ahead and contact us and we're happy to help you get set up. So this is our contact information here. We've got our NRDR support page where you can open a ticket or look at our help desk articles. You can also email us at nrdrsupport@acr.org or give us a call at the number below. So with that, I think we can move into the Q&A. So let's see what kind of questions we have so far. And it looks like we've only got 2, so please go ahead and submit questions if you have them. Our first question here is from Beth. Beth is asking, if you have multiple TINs, can you submit as individuals under one TIN and as GPRO under a second TIN? Yes, you can. So again, that question was, if you have several TINs that you're reporting, can you do some of them as individuals and some of them as group? You can actually submit them both ways if you want. So you can toggle between GPRO and individual for every TIN, and you can also go ahead and submit as a group and then change it over to individual and submit as individuals. Now, there might not be a reason to do it both ways, but that is an option. So yes, you can, you're not making the selection for all of your TINs, you're making the selection for each individual TIN. I see a question here from Carrie. Do we know, or when will we know if any measures received a same year benchmark for 2022? That's something that we can't find out until after the reporting period closes. I think it's probably around the summer when the final reports come out that we'll know what measures got a same year benchmark. So unfortunately, it's kind of just a shot in the dark at this early in the year. If you have the measure, we recommend reporting it. And then hopefully it will get a same year benchmark. And the more people who do report it, the more likely it is it will get a same year benchmark. And then we have a question about 145 here. Can you explain again how you anticipate measure 145 to score for 2023? So I appreciate that question because we do want to make sure that's totally clear. So measure 145 for 2023, because of the measure change, is no longer benchmarked. When a measure changes, it has to, it kind of goes back to the drawing board. It takes 2 years of reporting before it's considered to have a historical benchmark from CMS. So this is actually the same thing that happened with measure 405, which just recently got benchmarked again. So when the measure is no longer benchmarked, that means it's also no longer topped out. It's no longer capped at 7 points. So as long as there are enough people reporting the measure, it is eligible for up to 10 points if it gets a same year benchmark. And I forget the exact figures for establishing a same year benchmark. I want to say it's maybe 20 or 25 TINs reporting the measure, something like that. But that's a measure that so many people use. I mean, really almost every single person that's using our registry reports that measure. So as long as people continue to report it, it likely will receive a same year benchmark. And again, that means it would be eligible for up to 10 points. Now it all depends on what the benchmark is that they end up calculating, but you know, you can be confident that a score of 100% would give you a score of decile 10 if it gets that same year benchmark. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. It's kind of complicated to explain, but I think the outlook is pretty good for 145. And we have a question here from Beth. This is a good question as well. So this is about the upload data tab. In the upload data table, can you explain what the number of records updated is for? So when you look at that upload data tab and you see all the records that you've uploaded to us, you'll see the number of records that were successful, the number that were rejected, the ones that were successful but were missing elements, those are considered successful with warning, and then you'll see the number of records that were updated. Records updated just means that these are duplicates of previous records. So, you know, some people just re-upload the same file but make some changes to it, and records that weren't changed, or you know, if you update the numerator for a record and then re-upload it, it's considered updated. It just means it's overriding an existing record that was already in our system. Hopefully that made sense. Thanks for that question. And speaking of the upload data section, make sure that you're looking at your log files if you have anything rejected or that says successful with warning. Oh, this is great. We just got a question in here from Jocelyn asking, what do we do if we see rejected or successful with warning? So if you see that a record was rejected, you definitely want to look at the log file. It's usually rejected because of an issue with either the CPT code being invalid or the NPI not being added to the system. So if you were to submit records for a physician who you hadn't added to your list of physicians yet, that would be rejected. The log file will say whether it was an invalid NPI or an invalid CPT code, anything like that. Invalid patient age, if the measure is 18 and up, but you submit a 17-year-old, it would be rejected. Now, a rejected record does not need to be deleted from the system or anything. It's really just treated as if it doesn't exist. It means that we weren't able to apply it to the denominator of any of the measures. So you can simply correct the issue, whatever it was, and then re-upload the file, and then it will come in as successful if you fix the issue. Now, if you see the one was successful with warning, that almost always means that you just submitted a case without a numerator code. So it's like all the denominator information was there, but you didn't say performance met or performance not met. So that's also a case of just going in, adding that numerator code and re-uploading. Then we have a question in here from Corey. Hey, Corey. Corey's asking, does anyone have a new RAD that was previously with an APM and have had difficulty with CMS getting the RAD added to their group? How did you fix? That sounds like kind of a question for the audience. So if anybody can comment on that. I know that I don't know of any cases of that happening, Corey. I don't know if Judy has maybe heard of anything like that, but yeah, I'm not too sure.
I have not, but if no one from this group has experience with that, let's see what's Gretchen saying. No, that's not the answer. We can work on finding an answer for that, Corey. So if you can submit a ticket or email us some of the specifics, and we can try to help get an answer.
Stacy says that she's had that problem and it is a long, painful process. So sorry.
Yeah, but still, if you, and Stacy, maybe if you share with us what you had to go through, maybe having multiple instances of a problem with it might help. So it'd be good to know what that was.
Sure. So yeah, feel free to either type that out in the comments or we can take it to email. And I know you both have our email addresses, so we can try to get that figured out. So thank you for that question, Corey. Sorry we don't have a firm answer. Gretchen has a good question here along the lines of the rejected records and successful with warning records. Gretchen's asking, if you forget to fix one of the blanks that you're referring to, does that record get submitted to CMS and count towards the denominator population? Yes, it does if it's just missing the numerator code, because that it really just gets applied to part of the overall patient population. So we don't know if it's performance met or performance not, so we can't give it a performance score, but we know that it's part of the denominator population. So for example, if you have submitted 900 records successfully, but then you have 100 more that were missing a numerator code, it would just count against your data completeness. So it wouldn't hurt your performance score, but it would give you a 90% data completeness instead of 100%. Just an example, if it was, if you had 1,000 records total and then only 900 of them had a numerator code, that's what it would give you. So it counts, but it doesn't hurt your score unless it's enough records to dip you below that 70% data completeness. Which means, if it's only a handful of records out of thousands, it's not really something to be concerned about. And that's a good question too. I appreciate it, Gretchen. So we've reached the end of our Q&A so far. I'll give it another minute or so to see if anybody else has anything. And, of course, you can talk to us offline at the information on the screen here, either our NRDR support website or our email address here. I guess I'll also quickly mention, because we do still have a few sites that are part of the QCDR audit. This is something that CMS requires us to do every year. So we select a number of tax ID numbers and NPIs within those TINs, and we audit some of their records. If you're currently being audited and we haven't finished your audit yet, then your quality measures and/or improvement activities will be blocked right now. So don't be surprised if you run into that. Just feel free to email us and check in. Your auditor should be able to tell you if there's any information missing or if you're good to go. All right, it looks like we can wrap up. So I really appreciate everybody joining us today, and I wish everybody luck on submitting their CMS, their final MIPS data. And if you have any questions for us, please let us know. Thanks and have a great weekend.